Today is another book review day, and this week I have been reading Itch by Simon Mayo. And this is a children's book. I've gone for a children's novel this time. There's a couple of reasons I wanted to read this book. The first one, Simon Mayo is a radio DJ, and he's somebody that I've kind of grown up with. You know, there are certain people from your childhood that kind of stick with you as you get older, and he's one of those people. So I wanted to read the book that he'd written. And secondly, he'd chosen some of his character names in quite an interesting way. I live near a village town, a small town, village, I don't know, called Blytheborough. And Blytheborough is famous for its church. If you're interested, look up Blytheborough Church. It's got quite an interesting story attached to it. And Simon Mayo went to Blytheborough Church and looked around the graveyard and found a couple of interesting names on graves and used those as a couple of characters, or as a couple of character names in this book. And I find it especially difficult when I'm writing to think up character names, and graveyards are great places to do that because you come up with some really interesting obscure names from, you know, a couple of 100 years ago that you just would never have thought of. So I liked that local connection, that local link. The book, the story, isn't set in Blytheborough, nor is it set in the local area, but I still like that connection with the fact that the author did look in a local graveyard and did find some character names that way. So that's why I wanted to read it, really. And I think we should read a lot more children's literature. Like I've said before about teen literature and young adult fiction, you know, there's nothing wrong in reading that, and I think there's nothing wrong in adults reading children's books either. This one is a novel. It's got pretty much the same amount of pages in it as a grown-up novel would, as an adult book would. So you can't say, oh, children's literature is just easy and it's short. Yes, you do get the short ones, but you still get full-length novels that are children's literature. I mean, how many people are embarrassed about reading Harry Potter, and how many people are embarrassed about reading, you know, Roald Dahl's books? You know, they're part of our kind of our literature collections as adults, you know, if we've read them as children. And I think, you know, we should read across the board. We really should. So so this one came out of the junior library, and I'll do as I normally do. I'll read you the blurb on the back, and then I'll talk to you about the book. Okay. Itchingham Loft has caused explosions before. There had, in truth, been many bangs, flashes and smells coming from his bedroom in the past, but there had been nothing like this one. It wasn't just the bedroom walls that shook, it was the whole house. Not that Itch was aware of any of that, as he was unconscious. He would have stayed that way too if it hadn't been for the fact that his eyebrows were on fire. It's quite an interesting book, I will have to say. It's very sciencey. I'm not a science person. There's very few things that I remember from my science lessons at school. So I did find some of it quite difficult to understand, because it did revolve around the periodic table of elements. And I do know a little bit about the periodic table of elements. I do know a few things that are on there, mainly from a song that we used to sing at school. I don't know if you used to sing this one. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen and oxygen, fluorine, neon, sodium, magnesium, na, na, na. And it goes on and on throughout the whole table of elements. So I can only remember maybe 10 or 15 elements off the top of my head, but, you know, it comes in quite useful in pub quizzes every now and then. The thing that I don't really understand about the periodic table of elements is the numbers that are attached. When you see a table of elements, you've got the symbol, so hydrogen is H. Oh, look at me, how much I know. And then it'll have a few numbers next to it, and that relates to how many electrons and protons and neutrons there are. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure you will correct me because I am wrong. That's the bit that I don't understand. And so there's quite a bit about that side of it in the book, which just, it doesn't bore me. It just confuses me. And like I say, I've never been that good at science, and I haven't understood how many protons something has and what that means. So I didn't really realise that when I started reading. So basically, Itchingham is the main character, and he wants to collect every element on the periodic table of elements, and there are 118 different elements. And he wants to have a collection of every single item on there, and everything on the periodic table of elements is what makes up everything on the planet. I can't really give you much more of an explanation than that because I still get really, really confused. But anyway, he wants to collect, and he's started to build up a little bit of a collection. And with this collection of things, he does little experiments, and he just, things explode, things go wrong, and he's doing all of these things in his bedroom. And that's kind of how it starts off. Unfortunately, I did find it very slow going in the beginning. I almost wanted to put it down and not finish it, and I used to do that quite a lot with books. I'd read a few pages and not get anywhere and put it down, and I may have missed reading some really interesting books, and this one started really slow and I was struggling, and it wasn't just to do with the science element of it, it just was a very slow pace in the first few chapters. The chapters are also really, really long, and I know that shouldn't really matter, but sometimes shorter chapters keep it moving, and you feel like you're reading a lot more if you read 20 pages that's been divided up into, say, 4 chapters than one chapter of 20 pages. And I know that's probably like a psychological thing, but I felt like I was wading through treacle in the first few chapters because it was just very ploddy and monotonous and not much was happening. So Itch is he's going to be taking his GCSE, so he must be like 15-ish years old, and he wants to collect all these elements on the periodic table of elements, and he's found himself a dealer who goes by the name of Cake, and he's an interesting man who has a backpack full of bits and pieces, and Itch has managed to find various things through him, and he bumps into him one day, and he's looking for more elements to fill his table up, and Cake gives him something in a pot, and he's not really sure what it is, but Itch takes it, and he takes it into school to show one of his teachers because he's quite interested. His teacher is interested in rocks and minerals and things like that, and he's just like, oh, what is this that I've got? And they get the school Geiger counter, which measures radioactivity. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I most probably am. And it beeps and buzzes and goes quite crazy over this one rock. And we find out that it is an element that is not on the periodic table. And somebody else does some tests to do with protons and neutrons and electrons and other sciencey bits and pieces, and finds out that this element, if it was on the table, it would be element 126. But there are only 118 known elements. So there's a big hoo-ha about this element that is extremely radioactive and could possibly start nuclear, however you say it, war, if it got into the wrong hands. That's when it starts to get exciting, but it takes a while to get there, unfortunately. It also feels, I don't really know how to say it. Everything's very convenient in this book. Convenient things happen when they're on the run, when they're doing all the bits and pieces to, you know, to get rid of this rock that the bad guys are after. There are convenient things that happen, and I understand it's not a real life story, it's not based on fact, it is a fantastical story, but it just feels like I said, it's all a bit too convenient. Everything right happens for the good guys and everything wrong happens for the bad guys, and I don't know. I don't really know what to say about this. I am a little bit disappointed with this book. mainly because it was very slow in the beginning and then very unbelievable in the end. And I know, like I say, it's not fact and it is fiction, and it's, you know, it's supposed to get into kids' imaginations, and I've got nothing against that, but it just didn't match up. Nothing kind of sat right with me throughout. Things, I mean, he was in situations where he should have died and he just didn't. I mean, he was in some seriously dangerous situations with dangerous people chasing him, and guns and radioactive rocks and just loads and loads of things that could have gone wrong, and they didn't. I mean, it's not, I'm not going to say it's a perfect, like when you've got radioactive rocks you get radioactive poisoning, but everything was very convenient and very tied up and everything like that, and I just was a little bit disappointed. So give it a go if you like science, if you're science minded, but it, like I said, it just didn't sit right with me, and I wasn't overly happy with the outcome and with just the general development of the story. Really, it's not that I didn't enjoy it, it just didn't live up to what I thought it would. But I'm not saying you shouldn't give it a go, because somebody might enjoy it. There is a sequel. I may read the sequel. I don't tend to read 2 books in a row by the same author. I always like to have a bit of a break, but I'd just be interested to kind of see how the sequel progresses and what happens to these guys in this first book. So yeah, give it a go if you like, but I am a little bit disappointed with it. So if you would like to hear any of my other book reviews that I have given, some books I've loved, some books I haven't so much, then please subscribe to my channel where I do book reviews, and I also do videos about writing advice and bits of my own writing, really. So if you're interested in what I do, you can find out about that here on this channel. And yeah, just have a good day, and I will see you all soon. Goodbye.